on this computer. Okay. Welcome everyone. Passing it off to Lewis.
So the first part of today's meet will be about demos. So what we'll do is each pair will sort of describe what they worked on, what they built, and how they collaborated, the whole process, what you enjoyed, what you had trouble with, what you learned, just essentially just giving out your experience for the first week. So which pair wants to go first? All right, Abigail.
Sorry, Caitlin. Yeah, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, let me give you permission. Now you should have permission.
Okay, thank you. So let me get into the right one. Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, great. So how Caitlin and I are going to demo. So first, just a little I guess timeline. So we're going to bring up the acceptance criteria, kind of remind everyone of what we had to accomplish. Then we're going to go through the demo, and then Caitlin and I will talk a little bit about our code and our experience with writing it. If that sounds good. Okay. So first up, going over the acceptance criteria that we had. So the first is, just adding the project dependencies, which we did. But the other two were just the bulk of our feature. So making a change in the Firestore database and it shows up on the app, and then vice versa, making a change in the app and it shows up on the database. So with that being said, I'm going to bring up our app. And I'm also going to bring up Firestore so we can kind of see the front end and back end communicating. Okay. So there it is. So as you can see, as you look at the app, there's already some grocery items on there. So we have chocolate, soup, cake, and sriracha. That's quite a grocery list. But I want to draw your attention to the back end. So as you look at the documents on the back end, you'll see as I click into them that each of the grocery items will correspond to what you see on the app right now. So as I go through, soup, cake, sriracha. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you the front end communicating with the back end. So I'm going to go up to our form, and I'm going to put something personally that's always on my shopping list, which is coffee. Lots and lots of coffee. So I'll go ahead and I'll submit that. And as I submit it, you can see that it shows up right here in our list. And then on the back end, so if you look at the documents, you can see there was one added, which corresponds with the coffee that I had entered. And since these are alphabetized and coffee was the first one in our list, I will go right up to the documents, the first one, and you can see that coffee is right here. Yay, yes. So I will go ahead and I'll show you that the back end communicates with the front end by actually deleting manually coffee. Very sad, but actually never did that. But as we look at our app, you can tell that coffee is now gone. So the front end and the back end are communicating. So as you can see how our app looks right now, there's not any CSS or any of the extra stuff that makes an app look pretty. But what I really wanted to draw attention to was our submit button. So as Caitlin and I were coding, we used a form to enter our data. But when we were meeting up talking about our demo, we realized we were like, we didn't make this, we didn't think about accessibility actually when we were doing that. And for example, somehow we can make it accessible is actually, adding like a label for this. So for someone who's using a screen reader, and Caitlin and I had a really good conversation about screen readers, and that she actually tried to use one to really like put herself in that mindset, which now like going forward and making all these small features on our app, that it's important to think about in every feature that we make for this app to make it as accessible as possible. So going forward, that's something that's definitely on the forefront of my mind. So I'm gonna pull up actually our pull request and talk a little bit about the code. So let me go over to our pull request, and then I'm going to scroll down, and probably the smallest file. So embarrassingly enough, I don't think I'm used to as big as an app and how many files that this does have. So originally, I didn't realize we already had the configuration for Firebase. So in starting to connect the front end and the back end, I was reading through the documentation looking for this. Because of the apps I had created, I set them up myself. So I spent actually a little more time than I should have trying to find this, and I realized we already had it, which is wonderful. So, but I did get to read like a lot of good documentation about this and like how like each one feeds into how it connects the front end and back end. So if anything, it's just more of a learning experience, and I don't know, anything's helpful. So from this, we exported the database, which we needed to enter in to our grocery list and our add groceries component as well, so we could communicate with the backend. So I think that's all that I wanted to say, and I'm gonna actually pass it off to Caitlin right now.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Abby. That was a great demo of the app in use. So as Abby mentioned, there are two main components that we made within our app, which are add groceries and grocery list. So the first one that we have here on the screen is add groceries, which is basically just rendering a very simple form that has just an input, a text input, and then a submit button. The input being for the user to input a grocery item. And then upon submitting the form, the code will actually trigger Firebase to add a new document to the items collection. And then that input will match the user's input within the form. And when we were actually originally coding this component, we had both of the components rendering on the screen, which allowed us to see that when we were submitting the item, the grocery list was flashing with the updated input, but then it was disappearing. And so we realized we needed to add a prevent default on the form to avoid that and make sure that the information was persisting in the database. But then once we did that, this component was able to successfully send the information to the database, as you saw in Abby's demo. And then the other component that we worked on was the grocery list component here. And this one is allowing us to see the information in the database, which will eventually be formatted to be a nice list of all of the items within the grocery list. Right now it's a little bit, it's just kind of a block of text, but it is able to upload dynamically based on the information from Firebase. And this text, or this code rather, pretty much came from the documentation for React Firebase hooks. So using pretty much everything within the div that is being returned came from that documentation, which was really very helpful for being able to connect the React app to the Firebase database. Using hooks was essential in doing that. And yeah, I think that is all for our 2 components. So yeah, I guess now we open it up for questions if anyone has them.
Oh, that was great, very thorough. Perfect.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know. Are we allowed to ask questions during this time? Is that what?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Thanks. That was really good. That was a lot of work, I can see. But is there like, does Firebase have its own like predetermined structure for the data, or did you just have to conform with whatever Firebase was providing?
Yeah, so if you look down and so let me bring up this. So so Firebase is, and anyone can correct me, but I know it's made up of like collections and then documents within collections. So Firebase just makes it super easy to like grab it. So how we grab the DB and imported it into our components, it really made it super easy because we knew the names of like the collection. So it was, if we look at the code, it was super helpful. That's literally like all we had to do. And we copied this straight from the documentation, to be honest. But it also had like such great resources of like explaining why and like how, that, I don't know, I just like, it makes it so simple. So I really like, I use like in my, like any side apps, like I've been starting to use Firebase just because it's so like, I don't know, user friendly.
Also,
That makes total sense.
One thing that Jono told, I can't remember if this is when you were present or not, Corinne, but one thing that Jono told us yesterday is that this is actually not specific to Firebase, is that MongoDB also similarly uses documents and collections in a similar way to what Firebase does. So that's good to keep in mind. If you're ever talking to people about MongoDB, it follows a similar structure to Firebase.
Gotcha. Good to know. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
I love how it just magically listens to it and your app updates. I never get tired of that happening with this project.
It really feels like magic. Yeah.
It's so great. I love it. Yeah, and it is pretty, I love being able to interact with the database itself. You know what I mean? As someone who's a front-end developer, it's really fun to get in there and to like create your own things. And yeah, it's a really neat tool. I like it a lot.
It was very exciting once we got it working. Until then, it was very frustrating.
Yeah.
But then it worked, and then it was exciting.
Very exciting. Cool. What an excellent in-depth demo. So good.
I guess it's our turn.
Yeah, do you want to start your review?
I guess Daria is going to be sharing first. Perfect. So I will start with discussing the UIFR app. So essentially, the requirements for our tasks and our feature. So our feature was essentially creating setting the groundwork for our navigation for this shopping app. For that, we are using React Router DOM. As you can see at the bottom of the browser, there we have two links, the grocery list and the add groceries. This is going to be our navigation for the application. Now, if Daria were to click on grocery list, because right now you can't see anything, you will be seeing the added list that's in Firebase. This is a result of the integration that we had to go through during the merge conflict. So we integrated the new components that Caitlin and Abby created. And then if you were to click the groceries, it will replace what you're seeing over there with the submit form. One of the big features that we were required to do when you actually switched, you will also see that the URL will update the path. So grocery list will show you list. One thing that obviously we'll take into account, and I think it's in this week actually, is what to do with the homepage. So if we actually removed add items, it will be a blank page. So that is something that we're going to be addressing in the coming issues. So in terms of the navigation, one other requirement was for the ease of use, the user experience, the links are styled differently based on whether they're active or not. So currently both links are not active, but if, as Daria clicked grocery list, it just basically it bolds, and the other list just stays as it was. Now, if we click on add groceries, it's going to be the new active link, and now that one is bold. Yeah, that's pretty much it. As we discussed on GitHub, this is something we're going to have to see in terms of styling. I'm normally used to seeing like there's plenty of space over here, so I'm normally used to seeing grocery lists and add groceries like all on the same page if it's in the desktop. So definitely something that we could chat about later. I'm going to pass it on to Daria now, who's going to discuss the code.
Thanks, Karan. So as Karan mentioned, we used React Router DOM in order to be able to have different views at different paths. And here at the top, we've imported a bunch of components that come with React Router DOM. And then initially, we just used some dummy components for the list and the add item. But as we went through the merge conflict, we replaced them with add groceries and grocery lists that Caitlin and Abby created. And then in order to make routing work, we wrapped the entire app into the router component. And inside of it, we added a switch component, which renders either grocery list or add groceries based on which path is currently selected in the browser. And then at the bottom, we have our navigation with two links to the different paths. And we used navlink components from React Router DOM because we were tasked with making the current page, the link to the current page, bold. And this is something that navlink does very easily with this active style prop. So we didn't have to do anything else. We just chose navlink as our component. And yeah, I think that's it. That's all we did. So questions?
This isn't a question, but I just want to reiterate from the chat that you guys did a really good job of handling the merge conflicts. Because I was kind of glad that ours got merged first and we didn't have to deal with it because those are really scary to handle. And you guys, you did a very nice job of integrating the two features together.
Well, it was very nice practice because we didn't really, like our task for this week was, I feel, not very challenging. So at least we got to deal with the merge conflict.
Yeah, it was nice. I think other teams sometimes we'll start down the road just using link from React Router DOM, and nav link for this particular task makes it so much easier, either with that active style, or it also has an active class name prop, which you can use too. But
yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention this one part here. So the reason we used active style was because we still haven't, like as a team, we still haven't decided what we're going to do about CSS, whether we want to use like a framework or modules or whatever. So we just did inline styles for everything. And active style was just to kind of support that approach for now.
Perfect. Yeah.
Seems like that's a really good job of like thinking ahead too of what's going to make it easier down the line, like using, like Lauren was saying, like nav links. I feel like will make sense. Like for this particular project, maybe it wasn't necessary, or for this feature, but down the line that will make our lives easier, I think.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing about merge conflicts. One thing that Daria and I learned, actually it was more Daria that suffered from this, because I was like, hey, do you want to type this one? And she was like, sure, I'll do it. And so there were two ways we learned how to do merge conflicts. One was obviously you could pull and then deal with the conflicts on GitHub. And then the other one was to do it on GitHub through their editor. So that seemed like a great idea to me. So since Daria was typing, I was like, okay, let's do this. So we did the GitHub route. Everything worked fine, except for the fact that you don't have like self-closing tags and whatnot. So just keep that in mind if you do decide to go through the GitHub route.
Yeah, it seems like it's a much faster way to do it on GitHub, but actually you run into all these little problems, like all the indentation you have to manually fix, all the tags you have to close. So it's actually easier to do it in VS Code.
Yep, your IDE will help you a lot more than the GitHub UI will help you, for sure. Yeah, good job, you two. Very nice job. Nice. Well, what great demos, everyone. And like, you finished everything in like 10 minutes and boom, PR's up. It was really impressive work. And I feel like the team's really gelling. I'm super, super excited about this team. Good job, everybody. All right, Jonathan, I'm excited for this.
Let's do it. Let me share the screen. Again, yeah, well done, everyone. That was awesome. Let's see. Right. Closing some tabs. Okay, cool. So can everyone see my screen? Let me do the present thing. Let's see how this works. Okay, cool. So as you know, I'm doing the code review session today. So we'll be going through kind of what is a code review. So really getting into the details of what it is, the cycle of a code review, and then also what makes a code review a great code review. Definitely have seen bad code reviews in the past, in my experiences. And then also kind of more importantly is how can I help others review my code? And then I think point 5 and 6, how can I review others' code and exploring code in GitHub kind of go hand in hand. I will be doing like a live kind of GitHub UI demo thing. Now I know you've both either participated in code reviews or done code review this past week. So maybe this might not be completely new, but hopefully there'll be something that you can take out of it. So let's just jump into what is a code review. So code review is a conversation about a set of changes, and this is really important because this set of changes is going into a project and it's going to live in that project. And you want those changes to be kind of the best possible set of changes. And that's really where code review comes in. It is a really great place to share knowledge and to learn from others. And it's a way to collaborate. So you can share your own work, you can ask questions, either as the code reviewer or as the person kind of writing the code as well. And all of this kind of sharing knowledge and asking questions and stuff helps you improve as a developer. I see the cat, it's so cute. It also helps your team. You can decentralize knowledge. So having all of this documentation, all this decision-making in this remote place where anyone can refer back to in history is really helpful. It also allows you to share responsibility. So you're not on the hook for writing the most perfect code. You can kind of lean a little bit on your team to help you answer any questions, to help you kind of solve any bugs that you're running into. And maybe they can find a way to point you in the right direction in case you want to improve a little bit of that code. And then it all comes down to kind of improving the code base quality. So having a good code review where you're taking time to like look through something helps improve the code base. And I just want to point out with my experience with the smart shopping list, as I was learning, I read through both pull requests and went through all the discussions and actually gained so much knowledge from the discussions. And I think I would have gotten less knowledge if I just looked at some code changes or like looked up some tutorial and just like copy and pasted code. So really, really great stuff. So the cycle of a code review is, as you probably know, it's opening pull request, then you receive feedback, you make some changes, and that loop just kind of keeps going until there's no more feedback and there's no more changes that you need to make. And then once that's all done, you merge into main. So onto the fun topic, what makes a code review a great code review? So ideally, you would have automated tools that would help you answer any stylistic changes. So you wouldn't really want to do nitpicky, like, hey, you missed a semicolon here, because these tools like ESLint or Prettier will pick up these changes and let the person who made that pull request fix those themselves. Number two, you would also try out the feature locally or in a test environment. It's really great if you're trying to figure out like how this thing works, like pull it down, play around with it. I do that a bunch of times, all the time, just to see how something works. And if there's a really cool piece of code that you haven't seen before, it's nice to be able to test that and make sure it's actually doing what you think it's doing. And then another great heuristic is, will you understand this code a month from now? So code is made for humans. So when you write code, it's for humans. So if you can't understand it now, in a month or in 2 months, you might not have that same context, and you're definitely not going to understand it in that time. So making sure that you're asking those questions and being able to really fully understand how this code will affect the database, or sorry, affect the project, and how it could potentially not do what you think it does. So I think that's really important. And then the next 3 points are in bold, so very important stuff. So praise. I've definitely fallen into the habit of not giving enough praise on a pull request, where you're just saying like, hey, you need to change this, or like, what's this? I don't get this. I think when you put a pull request out, it's a pretty, like, you're putting yourself out there. That's a bit of code that you're writing yourself, and then you're hoping that people aren't going to like rip the shreds. So when you give a good code review, give a lot of praise, say like what they did great, share GIFs. I think GitHub has like GIF or GIF support. So I definitely use that a bunch. And then default to approval. So what that means is when you have a one line like console log, that's kind of a straight console log, everything else looks good. That's really the only piece that's missing. Instead of asking for like changes to remove that console log statement before merging, just give them a thumbs up and let them know that, hey, you might want to remove this line before we merge to main. And this shortens that code review cycle as well. So instead of them having to make the changes, ping you, say, hey, I'm done, and then you have to go back and review, you can short circuit all of that and get to, hey, this looks good. They clean it up and they merge to main directly. So that's a really nice way to short circuit that really long, and it should be a long code review cycle. And then be kind and empathetic. So this kind of goes along with praise and that vulnerability, but bringing if you have any questions, ask them, or if you have any questions or knowledge that you want to share, definitely share that knowledge, assume best intent, and assume that everyone is in this together, everyone's on the same team, and that we're all working kind of towards the same goal. So the next couple of points are, you help others understand your changes. So we'll cover this in a little bit, but this is about like when you're when you're making a pull request, adding kind of your own code review, and then try to answer all the questions. So if there's any questions that people have, try and answer all of them. I even sometimes give a thumbs up if it's like hey, can you change this? I'll give a thumbs up to say, acknowledge, like, I will change this. And then take your time with the code review. Depending on how many files have changed, it could be like a long process. So definitely make sure that you're spending time really understanding the decisions that have been made, and not just giving a really quick once over saying like, looks good to me, thumbs up, and then approve. So that's really important as well. Okay, so if there's run the code, which we kind of talked about a little bit, so I'm going to skip over the slide. So this is great. How can I help others review my code? So adding a meaningful PR description, those pull request templates have been awesome. I think I've seen all of them being filled out, which is great. And I've read through like the QA steps, and that's a really great way to tell someone like, hey, here's how you run it. Here's what you should expect to see if you pull down this code. So that's a great place, like great starting point is having a really meaningful PR description. If possible, write meaningful commit messages. Definitely had lots of fix a typo commit messages, but if you can, like, have some that kind of let the person understand your thought process. And then self-review your code. So after you've made a pull request, do a quick once over. I'm not going to go through line by line on my code, but you explain why you did what you did, and you ask potentially any questions. Like if you have some design decision that you're not too sure about, that could be a great place to ask a question. And if there's a really complex piece of logic, or maybe you're pulling in a library that's not being used before, you can definitely explain like why you're doing the things there. So that helps kind of preempt any questions that other people have, just kind of speed up that feedback, and also kind of lets you point to specific parts of the code base that you think might need a bit more attention. And then there's screen capturing tools as well. So Loom is being used. I think Lauren uses Loom a bit. Sketch I've never used. Zapier I've never used either, but yeah, there's all these screen capturing tools you can use.
Love Zapier.
Oh yeah?
I love it. I do not work for Zapier. I love Zapier. It's great.
What's the difference between that and Loom?
Zapier makes it easy to do screenshots and GIFs. And
Gotcha.
Loom is more like a short little video snippet.
Gotcha. Okay, well, there you go. Good difference. Did not know that. So let's just jump into some code review, or at least the GitHub UI. So I'm pulling up the Connect Firestore PR. It's already been merged, so there's some things I can't show you, and I'll try and jump to a different PR to show you some features. But as we kind of go through this code review, you see that we have the changes in green and any deletions in red. You notice that up the top here kind of tells you how many lines were added, how many were deleted. I use this sometimes when we're refactoring, or when someone says like, hey, I'm going to remove a bunch of code. It's really nice to see how much was removed. And then so the kind of key features that you'll use for code review are this like big plus button. If you click on the plus, you can leave a comment, and then we can start the code review process. So like, I don't know, say like, yay, nice work. We can start the review, and this will put the comment into a pending state. So this lets you add a bunch of comments, and this state stays across. Like if you close the PR and open up again, this state will stay there. So it's nice. You can kind of come back to that PR after some time. Another cool thing with Plus is you can click and drag, and you can kind of select multiple lines to comment on. So if there's something particular you want to talk about with this specific function that isn't related to a single line, you can comment on lines 4 to 8. And then the other cool thing with GitHub, I'm not sure if this is in other applications, but with GitHub, you can do suggestions. So if we have a code offense block and add suggestion, you can suggest like what potentially they might want to change. So that lets you specify, okay, probably shouldn't suggest highlight, but like that will let you specify like, hey, these are lines that I think might not be right. Here's what I think you could do to fix that. And then the person who made the pull request can go through and commit that suggestion, which kind of helps them out, and maybe can give a bit more context around like why that change, why you want to make that change. Okay, and then the other cool thing with GitHub is you have these viewed kind of tabs, so you can click on a file that's viewed to hide it. Say I've done reviewing this, and this also updates kind of this progress bar at the top, where you have two of 7 files viewed. And let's say that after you made a bunch of comments, the person has made changes, addressed those comments, and all you really want to do is see that like change. You want to see like the changes that they addressed. So we have this changes from all commits up here on the top left, and you can select the commits specifically. So let's say the latest commit is the one that's the one you care about. You can click on that and you can see just those changes. So that kind of cuts out some of the files, cuts down some of the noise. And the other cool thing that I really like is this jump to. There's also a file filter, but I really like this jump to because you can first see like all the files that have been changed or kind of modified. And then you can also jump to any specific file. So instead of like scrolling all the way down to like firebase.js, we can click on that and jump there. And GitHub has a keyboard shortcut for this. So I use this a bunch where you can press T and it will just pop up this drop down, and you can kind of move around really easily. And one of the main reasons I use this is if you have functions in a different file, rather than like scrolling back and forth between files, you can just jump back and forth, which is much faster. And then after we're done reviewing changes, making comments and all that stuff, we can click on this review changes green button here and submit your review. This doesn't show all the items because this is already merged. But if I just go to this PR, so this is my smart shopping list PR, I can review changes. I can't review my own changes, but you can click on approve, request changes, or comment, leave a comment which is kind of related to your code review, and then press submit review, and it will show up in the main page. So I think that's all. Did I miss anything with UI? Okay, cool. So last few things. Yeah, okay. Actually, no last few things. Share your thoughts. So what has been your experience in the past week with code reviews? Yeah, how did it feel to do code reviews this week? And yeah, has anyone had any previous experience with code reviews? Turn it over to you.
It was intimidating doing code reviews this week, but it was cool seeing like other people's conversations on the code. I think that helped guide, for me at least, like what we should be saying, like what kinds of comments we should be leaving or what we should be paying attention to. And actually, so at my job this week, I saw one of the devs, like I kind of just watched her do a PR, and I thought it was really helpful. I think, Jono, you were talking about this, like it's helpful to comment on your own code too, so that like when you submit it, you can explain like why you made changes in specific files,
yeah.
Which I hadn't thought to do in ours, but I would definitely keep in mind for future PRs.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for me, it was intimidating, and also like no matter what, it just felt like such a shallow assessment a lot of times. At least in my past, this one was better, but it was always like, great, good job, and it just being able to know that there's so many like tools that you can kind of essentially annotate the code and provide that for them. That's super useful, and it adds like more importance towards the code review for me. Like obviously reviewing someone's code is really important, but I didn't realize that you could do it to such an extent.
Yeah, that's really great.
I definitely just discovered a lot of features on GitHub that I didn't know existed. So I mostly just pulled everything on my local like environment and reviewed it there. And this was definitely not the best way to do that. And now I know.
Yeah, actually, sorry, you just remind me, there's one last thing, there's one last feature of GitHub, and that's this little cog here. You can change the way you see this screen to unified or split view. So if I go to unified view, I can see everything just in one file, and you can see all the changes and additions all in one place, if that's easier to view. Cool. Sorry.
About going back to what you said about checking your code in a test environment, this cohort now has preview URLs. So I think you've all seen in your PR, there's a comment that's left by a bot. And if you look at the first comment in your PR, it's actually a URL where you can test what your code will look like when it's deployed. And that's being done with Firebase as well. So if you click that, you can actually see what the PR looks like before it's merged in.
You had mentioned that on Slack, and I couldn't find what you were talking about, so it's really helpful to see.
Yeah.
Cool. And Abby, did you have any thoughts on code reviews, your experiences?
Yeah, well, personally for me, it's more intimidating for me, like not so much to like have someone look at my code like, yeah, like at this point in like my like coding like career, I'm like, oh yeah, rip that apart, like let me learn. But me like I'm like, me correcting someone else's code, I'm like, I don't like, I don't know. It's like sometimes I'm like, is what I'm thinking like maybe that's a good suggestion? Like I don't know. I think I'm more intimidated by like picking someone else's code apart when I'm like not super confident in like certain areas. So I think that's intimidating for me to leave a message.
Yeah, totally get it. I think at the end of the day, code review is a conversation. So I think you can definitely ask those questions, and rather than be like, hey, change this, you'd be like, hey, why was this there? And help me understand what am I missing? Cool. So that's all I had with code reviews. There's also some links here. I'm sure we'll share out the links as well after this. Cool.
Thank you, Jana. That was really helpful.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I love seeing, like, I wish I knew all of those how-tos in GitHub. Like, I wish I knew when I started doing code review how to do all of those things. It's super handy to know those things. And yeah, Abby, to your point, it is really hard to get started with code review. Like, what do I know? I have no idea. Like, I'm brand new in this code base, and all of you have been working here for 3 years, and I don't know what to say. But like Jonathan said, a really great thing to do is just ask questions, and that helps. Like, it just helps you get started, and then you get practice, and then you know the code better, and then you'll have insights, right? That's just how it starts. Cool. All right, and I love defaulting to approval is something I'm working really hard on with my team at work. And it's starting to, where did my people go? Oh, there you are. There you are. It's starting to take effect. So people I love how defaulting to approval really builds trust. Like, I trust the members of my team are going to make a change. Like, if overall the PR looks great, like maybe just let's tweak this variable name, looks good to me otherwise. And then of course they're going to change it. I mean, they're decent human beings, like they're going to do it. So it really builds trust in the team, and it helps everything move so much faster, which is nice for all of us. All right, so let's see. Our pairs this week are Abby and Daria, and Curran and Caitlin are paired this week. And you're working on issues 3 and 4. Let me know if you can't see my screen. I need to move you. You're way down here. There, now I can see you all better. Okay, so issue number 3, as a user, I want to set up a new shopping list so I can start tracking purchased items. All right, new shopping list. A shopping list consists of a set of items associated with the user's token. Creating a new list consists of the following sequence. Generate a new unique token, save the token to local storage, show the user the list view. There's a script in tokens.js that's already in your repository that generates this token for you. So there's a function in there that you'll use to generate this magic token. So for the acceptance criteria, for users who do not already have a token or a list, a button or link should exist on the home screen, right? This is what Corinne was talking about, right? We're gonna have a button now on the home screen that allows them to create a new list. Clicking on that button or link will generate a new token and save it to local storage. Once the token has been created and saved, the user is redirected to the list view, which we already have. And then for users who do have a token already saved in local storage, they should be shown or redirected to the list view. So that's issue number 3. And then issue number 4, as a user, I want to add a new item to my shopping list so I can start recording purchases. A shopping list item consists of the following data points: the name of the item, how soon are you likely to buy it again, either soon, which is in the next 7 days, kind of soon, in the next 14 days, not soon, in the next 30 days, and then finally, the last purchase date. The acceptance criteria for this issue, the user is presented with a form that allows them to enter the name of the item and select how soon they anticipate needing to buy it again, soon, kind of soon, not soon. When the user submits the form, the item is saved to the database associated with the user's token, along with the item name, an integer corresponding to the estimated number of days until next purchase is saved. Oh, sorry, I didn't read that very well. Let me say it again. Along with the item name, an integer corresponding to the estimated number of days until next purchase is saved. 7 for soon, 14 for kind of soon, and 30 for not soon. The last purchase date should be set to null initially, i.e. you can create an item without purchasing it. Item names should be displayed as a simple unordered list on the list view after they're added. So that's a lot of AC for that one. I will say you don't have to actually put the last an input for the date on your form. So it really should just be name and those 3, soon, kind of soon, or not soon, a submit button, and then you will add some information about last purchase date, but it's not a form that's not an input that people will have. So those are the 2 issues. First, does anyone have, do the pairs have a preference for which issue they'd like to work on?
Abby, do you have preference? Because I do.
Oh, and then I will default to your preference.
I would actually love to work on the 3rd issue this time, because last week we did something with the UI, and I would like to work on the other side of it now.
Okay.
That's okay.
How does that sound for Corinne and Caitlin? How does that sound?
Fine with me.
Good with me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Daria and Abby are going to do issue 3, Corinne and Caitlin, number 4. Great. And then what questions do you have about either of, let's start with issue 3. What questions do you have about number 3? For now, anyway.
I think it's pretty straightforward. So I'm imagining that we're only showing the token generated, sorry, So if the user doesn't have an existing list, then we are showing this link to create a new one, and then the token is generated, and then we check if they have it in local storage next time they come back. But do we also need to do anything with this token if they want to share their list, or does it just sit there for now?
Oh, that comes in a later story.
Okay.
That's in a later story, is a sharing of the token. What else will I say? Oh, these two issues really, there needs to be some communication that's happening back and forth between teams, because team 3 is working on the create a token functionality, and team 4 needs a token because when they save that shopping list item, they need to associate it with the user's token. So for team 4, you'll just want to create a pretend token right away while you're doing your work initially until you have group 3's code in your own branch, if that makes sense. So for now, team 4 won't really be able to, you won't have a token in local storage. You'll just have a variable or something that's set in your code. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then other questions about issue 3? No? All right. And then issue 4.
It sounded like you were alluding to, for the last purchase date, that's eventually going to be something that's also stored on local storage, like along with the token, or?
Nope. So last purchase date, when you save an item into the database, you'll save the name, how soon they're going to purchase it again, and you'll save a null value for the last purchase date. So an item has a name, blah, 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 how soon, and last purchase date associated with it. But you don't need to allow the user to enter last purchase date, just automatically save null. Yeah.
So for now, it's just null. Okay.
Yep. What else? Oh, I highlighted integer just because it's common for groups to save things as a string at first. Just make sure that soon, kind of soon or not soon value that gets saved is an integer, because that'll be handy down the line.
So in regards to this, when we submit this information, do we just assume that like once it's submitted that all the fields clear or go to their default?
That is a good question. That's probably a good idea. That's what I would suggest.
Sounds.
And then, oh, let me show you too. I don't think that we've pointed this out in the repository yet. So in your repository in resources, there's some wireframes. So if I go to, let's see, add, so here's the add item wireframe. It's going to have some really helpful information in terms of accessibility features. So for example, here is where the person would enter the item name. And so there's a label, an input field, and you should put a label with a for attribute on it. Here they're representing this as a label and 3 radio buttons. And it says group the radio buttons with a field set element. So no, you don't have to worry about the giving feedback when the item is added yet. I think that's a later story. But there's good information on these wireframes when you're working on a UI feature. And let's take a look at the welcome screen too. Let's see. Yeah, so here's the share token that comes later on down the line. But for this particular story, for issue number 3, you're working on this create a new list functionality. So it could look something like this. All right. Any other questions?
When I think this was discussed in the orientation, and I guess I could look at the documents that was used during the first day, but when are we getting to styling, or when is the conversation going to occur? Is it going to be more towards the end and we're just going to be doing inline styling for now if we need it?
Yep. So the last 3 weeks, are really just one issue. So let's look at your project board actually. I think it's issue 13. I think it's the last, oh, it's only the last 2 weeks. I'm a liar. Okay, the last 2 weeks, you'll spend kind of brainstorming ideas, coming up with architectural, technological ideas for how you want to handle styling and sort of a brand and a look and feel, and then come up with a design together and then implement that design. So that's the 2 weeks at the end. But if you want to be like collecting resources and you know, documenting things along the way, ideas that you might have, that might be a good idea to create a shared document where you're collaborating on that as you come up with ideas.
That makes
Would it
sense.
be appropriate? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask to follow up with what you were saying, Lauren. Would it be appropriate to comment on the issue preemptively? Like, this is something we might want to think about when we get to this issue?
Sure. Yep, for sure. There's lots of, you can comment on your issues in here. Sometimes people, rather than sharing their information in Slack, instead of coordinating in a thread in Slack for the week, they'll coordinate on GitHub issues. So they just make their comments right here, and that's a good place to do it too. I like, it's nice having it in Slack because then it's all in one place for the team and for mentors. It's just a little more easily accessible. But yeah, as you come up with ideas, you can put them here on that issue, and that's a good place. Good idea.
This is a non sequitur, but that record a loom button you have there, is that an extension, like a Chrome extension?
I think that it is. I can't remember if I had to install it separately. I probably did. It must be an extension, right? Because this is an accessibility one called Wave, and then yeah, that's my new extension. So if I would like to do a screen recording here, I can just click that and record here, which is really nice. All right. Very good.
Question. Sorry,
Yeah.
I almost forgot about it. So yesterday we were talking about testing, and so I was wondering if testing is a part of this, like writing tests is a part of this project, or is it something that we're not like supposed to do?
It's not. It was at the very beginning of Collab Lab. They had testing, and they found that layer added too much complexity to, it added too much work week to week. However, if you're finding that you're hungry to learn more and to work on more during the week, then go for it. Cypress, I think, is already installed and is good for doing end-to-end tests. I haven't worked with Cypress myself, but people rave about it. You can also do unit testing using like Jest and probably React testing library. That's probably, I don't know if it's installed already. I don't have the repo pulled up, but React testing library is kind of the one that everyone's using now rather than Jest and Enzyme. React testing library is the one that people seem to be using more of, I think. So that is something, it's good to dig into if that's something that interests you. And you know, we as mentors can help you with that too. Like I'm doing office hours this week, and if we want to talk about testing, I'm not like super expert at it or anything, but I've done it before. I do it at my job. So we can talk about it, and we can try to figure some stuff out. Cool. All right. All right. I will post the threads in Slack right after this, and I'll post our meeting here online once that's ready. And then, yeah, nice work, everyone. Week 1. How are you feeling? Good, right? I thought, oh my gosh, you all did such an amazing job. I'm really super excited. And then, yeah, Jonathan shared that he's working on the project. I started working on the project. I'd never actually done it before. So I wanted to put myself through the rigors of the project too. So it's been fun to work on it. So I feel your pain, everyone. All right. Thank you, everyone. Jonathan, great job. And we'll talk to you on Slack. Take care.
Bye everyone.